What is a sweeper keeper, what is a ball playing keeper, and why are both valuable from a tactical point of view? And what are the issues with David De Gea's game and how significant are they actually? And which keeper would be my main target to replace David De Gea next summer, if he should be replaced at all? But before I get into that, I have got a special announcement from the sponsors of today's video, OneFootball, which is now the place where on a Saturday night, if you're in the UK or Ireland, you can watch one free Italian Serie A game each weekend. As well as this, you can also use all the other football features that I've spoken about before with OneFootball. So if you are interested in watching European football, but just don't have anywhere to watch it, then you can go to the competition page linked in the description, and you can check out the free match that will be streamed this weekend. You can also watch highlights of all the Serie A games, and near live instant clips as well whilst the games are going on. And by downloading the OneFootball app, you will be helping to support the channel. So if you are a long time follower of the channel, if you aren't, then subscribe and click the bell, then you might remember a video I did quite a while back analysing why I thought David De Gea would eventually have to be replaced at Manchester United if Erik ten Hag was to fully implement his philosophy and style of play. And I think we've seen this play out, with United struggling in the opening 2 games of the season, particularly with playing out from the back whilst under pressure, with De Gea lacking the certain features of his game which are critical for a modern ball playing keeper, which I will explain in depth later on in the video. And so this has led to Ten Hag opting to go long more often than not from De Gea, rather than taking the perceived risk of trying to play out and potentially losing possession in and around their box. But first, let's discuss the type of goalkeeper that would actually be well suited to Ten Hag's system. Well, first and foremost, the keeper has to be a great shot stopper. At the top level, there's no way around it. Shot stopping isn't just about making those Hollywood top corner saves from long range, the shots that look great on highlight reels, but more often than not it's about having rapid reflexes to make saves from closer range. This is because in general the probability that a player scores from outside of the box is fairly low, and so the majority of big saves that a keeper is going to be asked to make are going to come from close range inside of the box, where the probability that the attacker scores is a lot higher, and this is an area where David De Gea thrives. Maybe not being as good as he was during his peak from 2014 to 2018, but he's still one of the best shot stoppers in the league in my opinion, even if he does seem to have the odd big mistake in his game at times. Second, and arguably most importantly, they need to be good with their feet, or should I say great with their feet, particularly at the top level. In the 2000s and early 2010s, it was conventional to completely disregard the keeper's technical ability in possession, really only playing with 10 outfield players, but the trend of top managers being very expansive in possession and becoming almost obsessive about being able to play through aggressive pressure by utilising the keeper as though he was an 11th outfield player, which is seen as almost essential because of the numerical and positional advantage it gives you. Now, a keeper at any side who wants to continuously look to play out of high pressure must be a good, long and incisive passer. The reason for this is that when United, or really any top side now, look to build out in the build-up phase, because most sides in the Premier League have adopted the European high pressing style associated with Cruyff and Guardiola, as well as Rangnick and Klopp, the goalkeeper now becomes vital in giving the side with the ball the numerical superiority in the defensive third. But this essentially turns the goalkeeper into an outfield player, and like an outfield player they need to have the ability to beat the front line press with a line breaking pass, or clip a pass over the front line to one of the fullbacks who usually have more space, as often because the opposition look to man press, their pressing shape is vertically and horizontally compact, leaving space on the flanks for a simple lofted pass out to the right or left back. If the opposition decides to use a wider man-to-man press, then this subsequently increases the width of the pressing shape, opening up more passing lanes centrally, allowing for direct line breaking passes, and so the goalkeeper's passing range and accuracy is actually one of the most important aspects of your overall possession system, as if you can't play out of a high man-to-man press where the goalkeeper is the free man, then you are either going to be forced along, lowering the probability that you're able to retain the ball and sustain the attack, or if you do look to play out the back anyway, you bear the risk of a misplaced pass or another mistake in possession from the keeper. Think of the goalkeeper as the first playmaker. He can see the whole game in front of him, doesn't have to receive the ball with his back to go under pressure, and usually has a greater degree of time to get the ball out of his feet before being pressurised than the centre backs do. And having a keeper with pinpoint kicking or even throwing accuracy is going to be a massive improvement to United's ability to play through an opposition's press and exploit the space higher up the pitch. And this is definitely one of the major issues with David De Gea at the moment, arguably the biggest issue, although I will elaborate on what I think is the biggest issue later on, and Ten Hag clearly agrees, as after struggling with this in the opening 2 games of the season, Ten Hag reverted to a more conservative route, instructing De Gea to go long from the build-up if there aren't any clear passing lanes open into the backline or central midfield. This is doing the job and is a key reason for United's turnaround, but is it ideal? Definitely not. Ten Hag is definitely a manager with a progressive style and an offensive-minded ideology, and so when you look at every other team in the Premier League with a manager who could also be described in this way, you see that they all use ball-playing keepers. And if you watch my analysis that I did on the Arsenal game, a factor in Arsenal being able to play out of their defensive third under United's press was Ramsdale's ability to clip the ball over Sancho and Antony into Ben White and Zinchenko when the 2 United players held advanced positions in the press. United just don't have this ability with De Gea and goal, and so you can see why Ten Hag has tailor-made his in-possession system around De Gea. The third thing that a modern goalkeeper needs is sweeping ability. What I mean by sweeping is coming outside of the box to make a clearance from a through ball, and the value in this can be seen when we compare how a sweeper keeper and a traditional keeper like De Gea affect their team system higher up the pitch. Here we can see that with De Gea in goal, when United do look to press the opposition aggressively, because De Gea isn't comfortable coming so far outside of his box, United's backline cannot squeeze up the pitch as much as maybe Ten Hag would like them to, and so because the defensive line is taking up a deeper position, attempting to close down the space in behind, they are subsequently forced to open up more space in front of them between themselves and the midfield. But if United had a sweeper keeper who had the ability to come out higher up the pitch, this would enable the backline to squeeze up the pitch a lot more, sitting on the halfway line at some points, to close down the space between them and the midfield line, and increasing the vertical compactness of the overall pressing shape, and making the press a lot more efficient overall. Because De Gea can't provide this, as seen from his FB Ref report, as over the past 365 days, when compared against every other goalkeeper in Europe's top 5 leagues, where he ranks around the 5th percentile for his defensive actions outside of the box at the time of writing, and around the 20th percentile for his average distance of defensive actions, showing that it's not just that De Gea isn't an elite level sweeper keeper, is that sweeping just isn't his game at all. And so Ten Hag is reluctant to use an extremely high defensive line, as even with Lisandro Martinez and Varane, who are fairly quick, the massive space would still make United hugely susceptible to runs in behind their defence. The fourth thing that a modern day goalkeeper needs is the ability to come and claim crosses, whether this is from set pieces, cutbacks from the byline, or deep crosses on the flank. And I think in general this is a pretty overlooked attribute when people discuss which keeper is better, as it falls into a different kind of category to shot stopping, reflex saves and one-on-ones, and that is alongside sweeping in a category that is known as goal prevention, whereas the other 3 I mentioned would fall into the category of goal stopping. So we have 2 categories, goal stopping and goal prevention. De Gea excels at goal stopping, but is pretty underwhelming when it comes to his goal prevention, and I think this is why people still rate De Gea so highly, and even higher than keepers like Alisson and Ederson, which I think is pretty ridiculous at this stage, because like with his sweeping and ball playing ability, his ability to come and claim crosses is pretty abysmal, sitting in the literal 1st and 2nd percentiles for crosses stopped, and for his percentage of crosses stopped, showing that De Gea's cross claiming isn't just bad, it's pretty much non-existent. So out of shot stopping, ball playing ability, sweeping and claiming crosses, De Gea is poor in the last 3, and has even declined from his shot stopping peak a few years ago. To me, De Gea doesn't suit a Ten Hag Manchester United side, and would thrive a lot more in say Mourinho's Roma side, because he wouldn't have the pressure of playing out of the back, and wouldn't have to venture outside of his box that often at all. So who should Manchester United sign to replace De Gea? Well, I'm going to start with more wildcard options before getting to my main targets. But before I go on, I do now have a clips channel where I will be uploading shorter content from my previous videos, and I'll even release some clips of some future videos that should be coming out soon, so subscribe to the channel, it will be linked in the description, and follow my Instagram and Twitter for more content as well, those will all be linked in the description below. So we'll start off with some keepers who are being talked about in regards to being De Gea's replacement, but who I think United should avoid. The first keeper I would avoid would be Andre Onana, who seems like a suitable option considering that he was Ten Hag's keeper at Ajax, and despite moving to Inter Milan at the end of his Ajax contract in the summer, I still think he'd be attainable for around £30 million next summer. However, the reason I'd avoid him is that I just don't think he's at the level that United need. I mean, he does fit what Ten Hag would want, being a good ball playing keeper, comfortable during the build up, when under pressure, and being able to find incisive passes through the centre, or lofted passes out to the flanks to enable United to beat the press. I don't think he's as good as some of the other keepers that I'll mention, but he's certainly good enough and a significant improvement on De Gea. His shot stopping is one of his strong areas as well, having great reflexes for short range shots around the box, and being comfortable with long range efforts as well. And over the past few seasons, he has consistently overperformed his post shot XG, which is always a good indicator of a good shot stopping keeper. But the reason he's on my to avoid list is because I think that when it comes to claiming crosses, and specifically his decision making when sweeping outside of the box, there are much better options on the market for Ten Hag, given Onana's likely price tag of around £30 million. David Raya is another keeper I've heard linked with United, and even though he does excel in most of the areas I have highlighted as essentials for the modern day keeper, when it comes to his shot stopping, I just think he's a level below what United need. If we look at his FBref report, we can see that over the past 365 days, he's just underperformed his post shot XG by 0.11, sitting in just the 27th percentile. He's also one of those keepers who seems quite prone to a positional or technical mistake. Although I think if he can iron these out and improve his shot stopping, I do think Raya has the ability to be a top level keeper, not just because he's still only 27, relatively young for a keeper, but also because he excels in his ball playing ability, where he is extremely comfortable with the ball at his feet, playing a key role in the build up in the defensive third, whilst also having the range and accuracy of passing to beat the opposition's press. And we can see this as he ranks in the mid to low 90s for his launch passes attempted and completed, while sitting in the low 70s for his completion of these launch passes, with a very impressive 44.9% success rate at the time of writing. He's not exactly a commanding keeper in the box, which is typical of Spanish keepers, as he only stops around 5.5% of crosses he faces, sitting in the 28th percentile. He does make up for this with his sweeping ability, sitting around the mid 80s for his defensive actions outside of the box, and so I would say that Raya has the attributes needed to be a top level modern keeper, but he needs to refine his shot stopping and overall improve his goalkeeper intelligence, which I think will come with age, but right now I don't think he's a man to replace De Gea. The final keeper that I think United should avoid might be a pretty controversial one, as it's Diogo Costa of Porto. Now Costa, like Onana, wouldn't be a bad choice as Ten Hag's keeper, but I do think he has some deficiencies in his game that do make other options more appealing. He's an excellent passer, able to play short passes around the press or clip passes out to the fullbacks, being able to play almost as the third defender between the two centre backs. In just under 1,000 minutes that he's played in the Champions League over the past 365 days, he does rank around the low to mid 90s for his launch passes attempted and completed, with an accuracy rate around 47%, which like Raya is extremely impressive. However, I do think that Costa's decision making when he does come outside of the box is slightly better than the Brentford keepers, as the 23-year-old Portuguese keeper is an excellent sweeper, mopping up behind that Porto back line, which sees him rank in the low 90s for his defensive actions outside of the box. He's also a fairly decent cross stopper as well, ranking around the 70th percentile for that metric. However, whilst he is ranking very high for his ball playing ability, sweeping, and even his cross claiming, when it comes to his shot stopping, he doesn't excel as highly, underperforming his post shot XG by 0.10 per 90, ranking in just the 29th percentile. And so maybe suggesting that United avoid Costa is the wrong terminology. He would actually be a very good option, being an improvement on De Gea when it comes to his ball playing, as well as his shot prevention, but I just feel like that there are better shot stoppers available on the market. And as I said at the start, shot stopping, including short range reflexes, one-on-ones and handling, are all still essential aspects of an elite level keeper. So now we come on to the first of my 4 main targets, and I've split them into 2 different categories: budget options, which are older keepers who are more short-term focused and would cost significantly less than the other category, which is premium long-term options. My first budget option would be Jan Sommer, who is now 33-34 in December, but is finally getting the recognition that I think he has deserved over the past few seasons. He's a fantastic shot-stopping keeper despite being just 6 foot in height. From close range, he's quick off his line and has cat-like reflexes, able to adjust and react quickly to close down a shot and spring back up almost instantly, ready for a double save. And we can see this shot-stopping ability is over the past 365 days. For Borussia Mönchengladbach, the Swiss international has overperformed his post-shot XG by a massive 0.23 per 90, putting him in the 94th percentile. This means that over a 50-game season, Sommer would stop around 11 more goals than would have been expected from his XG model, so you can see how valuable an elite shot-stopping keeper can be over the course of a full season. To put this into perspective, David De Gea only overperforms his post-shot XG by just 0.03 per 90, ranking in the 62nd percentile, which isn't bad, but it does make me question whether he's an elite level shot stopper or he's begun to decline in that department. But back to Sommer, he's also a great great sweeper keeper, sitting in the mid-90s and high 80s for both his defensive actions outside of the box and the average distance of those defensive actions outside of the box, showing that Sommer would be more than suitable for playing behind a high defensive line. I wouldn't call his cross-claiming a strength, but it's still a massive improvement on David de Gea's, as Sommer sits in the 58th percentile for his cross-claiming percentage, which becomes quite impressive once you consider that he is just 6 foot exactly. He's very competent with the ball at his feet, being able to interact with the centre backs a lot and staying composed under pressure, which would give Ten Hag the confidence to play out of the back even when the opposition looks to press aggressively, which at the moment with David de Gea in goal he has to revert away from. Although despite seeming like the perfect option for Ten Hag, given that he's a ball playing sweeper keeper who is already one of the best shot stopping keepers in Europe, whilst being an improvement on De Gea in the cross-claiming department, the only downside is that he is 33, soon to be 34, although that would enable United to get him on a free at the end of the season when his contract at Borussia Mönchengladbach expires. I'll come on to whether Sommer is the keeper that I would bring in next summer, but let's first look at one of my premium options. Mike Maignan is AC Milan's 27-year-old French ball-playing keeper who was signed from Lille last summer for a fee in the region of 15 million euros, and he's already established himself as one of the best modern keepers in Europe. Like Sommer, the Frenchman has excellent close range reflexes as well as his overall shot stopping, which can be seen as he overperforms his non-penalty XG by 0.12 per 90, ranking in the 80th percentile, which isn't as high as Sommer's, but still adds statistical weight to Maignan being one of the best shot stopping keepers in Europe. With the ball at his feet, he's competent playing out with short and long passes, breaking the lines through the centre, or lofting balls out to the flanks, which can be seen as he ranks in the mid 80th percentile for his launch pass completion rate with 48.1%. He sits in the mid 90s for his cross stopping percentage, whilst he also looks fairly average, sitting around the 50th percentile for the number of defensive actions he completes outside of the box per 90, and he does rank in the high 70s for the average distance of these defensive actions that come outside of the box. I think these stats from his FBref report back up my opinion that Maignan has the ball playing, cross claiming and shot stopping ability to be Manchester United's number one, not being as good as Jan Sommer from a shot stopping point of view, but being a much better claimer of crosses, and also being a better long range passer, whilst I would say that Sommer is a better sweeper keeper. Now the obvious advantage that Maignan has over Sommer is that he's around 6 years younger than him and hasn't yet come into his peak, which Sommer is firmly in at the minute. However, whilst now another keeper in the Bundesliga who like Sommer falls into the extremely underrated budget options category is Bochum's Manuel Reimann, who is 34 years old and only played in the Bundesliga for the first time last season, but it's fair to say that he looks more than comfortable in the German top flight, and to me is one of the most underrated players in all of Europe, and not just amongst keepers, and this is why. Over the past 365 days, when compared against every other keeper in Europe's top 5 leagues, he ranks in the 99th percentile for his post-shot XG minus goals allowed, with a massive 0.32 per 90, whilst also ranking in the 99th percentile for his defensive actions outside of the box, and for the average distance of those defensive actions outside of the box, along with his launch passes attempted and completed, whilst also sitting in the low 90s for his pass completion of those launched passes. What this tells us is that Reimann's output over the past 365 days in the Bundesliga is not just good, it's elite. In the top 1% for his sweeping, long passing, shot stopping, and even when it comes to his ability to come and claim crosses, he ranks very highly despite being just an inch taller than Sommer at 6'1". Like the Swiss keeper, given his age, he isn't going to be a long-term option just for the next 2 to 3 years. However, he would definitely be significantly cheaper than Mike Maignan, as despite having a contract at Bochum until 2025, I can't see Reimann costing any more than £10 million maximum, so definitely would be a much cheaper option. But my alternative premium choice target to replace David de Gea would be Robert Sanchez of Brighton, who would likely cost United a similar amount to Maignan, maybe slightly less, but I'd say at least £40 million to maybe Magnan's £50 million. Like the Milan keeper, Sanchez ranks around the 80th percentile for his post-shot XG minus the goals allowed, with 0.13 per 90, showing that both keepers have a similar shot-stopping ability, seeing them rank in the top 20% in Europe. Sanchez, like Maignan, ranks very highly for the percentage of crosses he stops, sitting in the mid 80th percentiles, and whilst Maignan doesn't rank extremely highly for his defensive actions outside of the box, neither does Robert Sanchez, with both sitting around the 50th percentile. However, the average distance of those defensive actions outside of the box are a lot higher for Maignan, sitting around the 80th percentile, while Sanchez is in the bottom 20% for that metric, showing that Maignan is the superior sweeper. In terms of ball playing ability, both are comfortable playing out under pressure with the ball at their feet, and both have those abilities to play those long passes upfield to bypass the press as well, and so they're pretty much equal in this department, I would say, with both being massive improvements on De Gea, of course. But overall, I think I would just about choose Maignan over Sanchez as my premium long-term option, as I think whilst both keepers are slightly different stylistically, Sanchez being a lot taller and more commanding, with Maignan slightly shorter but arguably more athletic, they are pretty much equal in every department other than sweeping, where I would say Maignan is probably the better, maybe 70-30 superior in that ratio, but both are very good with the ball at their feet, capable of playing short passes around the box. Actually record a significantly higher post-shot XG minus goals allowed than David De Gea, which shows both keepers' abilities, and both are massive improvements on De Gea, certainly in terms of sweeping and cross-claiming. Mike Maignan would be slightly more expensive, but he would be my first choice, with Sanchez being a close second. Both are just coming into their mid to late 20s, so plenty of time ahead in their careers, making this transfer one that doesn't just improve United in the present, but also for the next 4 to 5 years at least. I do think both Sommer and Ryman would be excellent options if those two weren't available and United just wanted a stopgap, but in my opinion, ideally one, probably Sommer just because of his experience, would also be signed on a free at the end of the summer and given the role of United's second choice keeper. And both, like Sanchez and Maignan, would suit Ten Hag's style of play and are much better than current number 2 Martin Dubravka. So to me, it seems like an inexpensive but necessary upgrade. So who do you think should be Manchester United's next goalkeeper? Let me know in the comment section below. Check out some of my other videos in the description. Give the video a like, check out the Clips channel, which will also be in the description. And of course, subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications as well.